Imagine standing under a vast open sky when a blinding flash of light tears through the clouds, striking you with the force of a freight train. For most, this is a once-in-a-lifetime tragedy that ends in an instant. But for one man, Roy Sullivan, this was a recurring nightmare that defied every known law of probability. Between 1942 and 1977, this Virginia Park Ranger was struck by lightning 7 different times. He didn't just survive the electricity of the heavens, he became a living legend, a man who seemed to be a personal target for Mother Nature herself. Yet, the most shocking part of his story isn't how he lived through the fire, but how he eventually died. It wasn't a bolt from the blue that finally took him, but a quiet, crushing heartbreak that proved more lethal than any storm. The first strike happened in 1942. Roy was stationed at a newly built fire lookout tower in Shenandoah National Park. A massive storm rolled in, and because the tower was so new, it had no lightning rod installed yet. The structure was hit 7 or 8 times, and the inside was a chaotic mess of fire and sparks. Roy tried to run out of the tower, but a bolt caught him just a few feet away. It burned a half-inch strip all along his right leg, hit his foot, and blew a hole through his boot. It even stripped off his big toenail, leaving him bloody and reeling. It was a terrifying introduction to the raw, unbridled power of the sky, but he walked away. At the time, he likely thought it was a freak accident, a one-in-a-million occurrence that would never happen again. He was wrong. 27 years of peace followed, perhaps lulling Roy into a false sense of security. He continued his work as a ranger, patrolling the beautiful, rugged woods of Virginia. But in 1969, the sky came looking for him again. He was driving his truck on a dangerous mountain road with the windows down. Lightning struck a nearby tree, deflected, and shot straight through the open window of his moving vehicle. The blast was so powerful it knocked him unconscious and singed off his eyebrows and every bit of hair on his head. His truck kept rolling toward a steep cliff, stopping only when it hit a tree near the edge. When Roy woke up, his face was charred and his memory was a blur. Nature had found him a second time, even inside the supposed safety of a vehicle. The frequency of these attacks began to defy all logic. In 1970, a bolt hit him while he was simply standing in his own front yard, searing his left shoulder and leaving a scar he would carry forever. By 1972, the human lightning rod was struck again, this time while working inside a park station. The bolt set his hair on fire, and he had to use wet paper towels to smother the flames. Roy began to feel like a hunted man. He started carrying a gallon of water with him everywhere he went, terrified that his head would spontaneously combust at any moment. He was no longer just a park ranger. He was a man living in a state of constant electric siege, always looking at the horizon for a stray cloud. The fifth strike in 1973 felt more targeted than ever. Roy saw a storm cloud and tried to outrun it in his truck, driving miles away from the center of the storm. He thought he had finally escaped the cloud that followed him, but when he eventually stepped out of his car, a bolt dropped from the sky and hit him, once again setting his hair ablaze and knocking his shoe off. In 1976, he was struck while hiking on a trail, severely injuring his ankle. The final blow came in 1977 while he was fishing in a quiet pond. Not only did the lightning burn his chest and stomach, but he also had to fight off a bear that tried to steal his trout immediately after the strike. He fought the bear off with a stick, still smoking from the electricity that had just coursed through his veins. Roy Sullivan became a global sensation, recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records as the most struck human in history. But the fame brought a crushing, silent loneliness. People were afraid to stand near him, fearing they would be collateral damage in the next inevitable strike. His wife was even struck once while they were out together, which only deepened his guilt and isolation. He became a social outcast, a man feared by his own community because of a curse he couldn't control. Despite surviving 700,000 volts of raw power over 35 years, Roy's spirit was fraying at the edges. The man who could survive the literal wrath of the atmosphere could not survive the cold silence of a lonely heart. In 1983, the man who was invincible against the elements finally broke. It wasn't a storm that took him, but the internal pain of an unrequited love and the heavy weight of his social isolation. Roy Sullivan took his own life with a gunshot wound to the head while lying in bed. He proved a tragic truth that while the human body can endure incredible physical trauma and literal fire from the heavens, the human mind has its own fragile breaking point. Nature couldn't kill him with all its power, but the absence of human connection and the weight of heartbreak did. His story remains a haunting reminder that the most dangerous storms aren't always the ones we see brewing in the sky. Sometimes they are the ones we carry silently inside us. Even a man who can walk through fire cannot walk through life alone. The sky may have tried to claim him 7 times, but it was the silence of an empty house and the ache of a rejected heart that finally finished the job. Roy Sullivan's legacy is more than just a record in a book. It is a profound lesson on the strength of the human frame and the fragility of the human soul. When we look at the lightning today, we see a force of nature. When we look at Roy, we see a man who survived the impossible, only to find that the most lethal strike of all doesn't come with a flash of light, but with the quiet closing of a door.
Almost gone.